Hey everybody, this is Jen Keenan at the Four Squares Residential Group at Keller Williams Real Estate, coming to you with my Love the Way You Live video series. And as I've mentioned, this year we're talking to agents in other markets because clearly with COVID, people are working remote and people have the opportunity to move. And what a better way to showcase my referral partners around the country. So today I'm super excited to have Rhiannon, at like this song, Rhiannon Foster joining me from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Beautiful Vancouver, yes.
West Coast in the house.
A little bit rainy today, but we're not going to talk about that.
No, and we actually are having a beautiful day here in Greater Boston. So, which for November can be tough. So I'm going to take this as a win as myself. Yeah, and so Rhiannon joins us from the Opportunity Homes Collective, which is out of Century 21 in downtown Vancouver. So Rhiannon, tell us about the market in Vancouver, what it's like to live there. So excited to talk about Vancouver. I've never been, so I'm going to come visit soon, but it's like my top 3 places to go.
Well, you've got a place to stay. Let's start with that.
Thank you. I love it. I love it.
And a chauffeur the entire time. No, Vancouver is such a lovely place. It really does have literally everything. They consider this, and we consider this really here, a lifestyle place to live. So you literally have mountains, ocean. There's so much to do all the time. When I have family back in Ontario in Canada, and what I used to do is after going skiing in the morning and then water skiing in the afternoon, phone back and make everybody jealous. Like,
I love it. I love it.
The beauty of living out here. And there's just so much to do, especially if you love the outdoors and nature. We basically live in nature, and we're really fortunate that way. We're not like a lot of other cities across Canada because we do have such a huge emphasis on the green and on green living. So it really is, when you fly into Vancouver, there's not it's not like flying into Sao Paulo where it's rows and rows of concrete. Like, it is beautiful and lush, and you can see that as soon as you come on in. So
I love it. And I think that would really, that would be very appealing to folks here in Greater Boston because, while we have very distinct seasons, we can be in an hour and a half, we can be in the mountains of New Hampshire and ski. We can get to a beach within an hour if you're pretty much in eastern part of the state. We love our seasons here too. And, it's hard for us to live outside all the time because winter, but I think, your climate's a little bit different too out there on the West Coast. It's probably not as snowy as it is here.
No, definitely not. We get maybe 1 or 2 snowfalls a year, maximum, maybe a foot of snow that hits the ground actually in the city itself. Of course, up on the mountains, it's a totally different scenario. And that's why people love to come here for skiing in places like Whistler, which is a big deal, or even going over to Vancouver Island and being at Mount Washington there. Like, lots of incredible places to actually do the outdoor living, on the ski slopes. And then, so in that regard, we've got great weather for that, but it's never cold like it is. You don't get those breeze. You don't get any of that stuff. Like, that does not exist here. And it's actually kind of funny because there's so little snow that actually ever happens. Not everybody has their snow tires when they should. Yeah. So basically, if it snows, the entire city grinds to a halt, which is
really funny.
Hilarious. So tiny small hills, the buses will be stuck, no one can get around. So for someone like me, I'm adapted, to driving in the snow. I just worry about everybody else.
I'm going to share my screen because I want to show the map, like, just to give people context of Vancouver, if no one's ever looked at a map lately, or just give a sense of where we're talking about. So here's Seattle, which is obviously in the northwest corner of the United States. And, Vancouver is almost due north. Mm-hmm. Obviously you have to fly, right? Or how long is the drive if you were to drive?
You can drive easy, no problem. The hardest part about the drive is getting over the border. And I mean, obviously now we've just opened all of that up, but you still need negative PCR test if you're going back and forth for travel that way. But I mean, we've got a train that runs down that way. So a lot of people, if you're into soccer or if you know it as English football,
Yeah.
there's some teams over on this side. So sometimes we'll do a train down and go and watch games. Obviously, with the Seahawks there, we've got a lot of fans up here, obviously. So it's actually a really nice little getaway for people living here to go down there.
Nice. And we're used, you know, folks here in Greater Boston, we always, you know, it's kind of like a rite of passage when you're late teens, early 20s to go up to Montreal for a weekend. But that's a good, that's, I mean, that's like a 4 or 5 hour drive for us. So it's certainly much quicker, you know, where you are to kind of hop between the US and Canada, which I think is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's on par. Yeah. I mean, the hardest part is always getting over the border, right? So
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah. So here we are looking at you know, we have this is East Vancouver here. And then where's like really the downtown area? Is that up here?
yeah, so right where you see that little bit that says Canada Place, that is
Okay.
basically, yeah, and just scroll right over. So that's sort of the heart of everything in that little sort of peninsula just before you hit Stanley Park. So Stanley Park
All up
is
here.
just at the top there, and that's what we're really known for, is the green and the outdoor and the lush. And Stanley Park is this absolutely beautiful preserve. And so there's a wall that runs all the way around it, and you get to walk around, take a look at houses from all different sides, of course, because over on the other side, up north, you'll see that there's North Vancouver, West Vancouver, and that's where a lot of the very large, expensive places are, and large mansions. So it's a lot of fun to take a look at those. But the downtown core is right in that almost dead center of the screen right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
right here.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about the types of properties that are there. So are those mostly high-rise condos?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Vancouver, we have always, like, because we're such a small place and we're a little confined. So we have mountains to the one side. We have what's called the ALR, which is the Agricultural Land Reserve. So that's a space where we can't build any properties. It's strictly
Oh.
used for agriculture. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
we have ocean on the one side.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a very limited amount of space to build. So a lot of our space has been building upwards, obviously.
Okay.
We've been fortunate enough in Vancouver to live in our downtown core for many, 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 many moons. So, you know, back in the 50s, they started building properties and it was down in that area. So small co-ops, that kind of thing, back in the day where people returning from war would be having, you know, their first place coming back. So a lot of that in the downtown core, which isn't the same across Canada. Somewhere like Toronto, they've only in the last 15, 17 years started to build condo living in their downtown core. So which is very different from us. So
Yeah.
there they used to shut the lights off at 5 p.m. and
Yeah.
everybody would leave the downtown core and come back the next morning, you know, and those people work in finance. But for us, we live and work literally where we play, and we do everything all in the same space. So it's actually quite interesting. But in the downtown core, very little for detached properties and not a lot of a lot of townhomes, but a ton of condos.
So do people live kind of up on this other side of the ocean here and commute in? So if you did want a single family home or you wanted some, you know, a little bit more space to spread out, you're going to be up here on the other side.
Yeah, so you'd be up there. So that's considered North and West Vancouver. West Vancouver is considered the much more affluent and more expensive area. So which is just due north and just over, you can see it says West Vancouver.
Yep.
And on the North Vancouver side, it's a little bit different. There's a nice contingency of hippies who still live there from like the 70s. But a lot of development going on in that area between the North Vancouver district and the North Vancouver city. And you'll find a lot of young families there. And actually, in terms of immigration, it's kind of weird. Lots of South Africans love to be over on that side as well.
Yeah.
Love to be green and lush. And so there's a fair amount of single family home there. And then of course, if you go due south, so that is where the bulk of our single family residences, as you
Like
keep.
over here in Grandview
Yeah,
Woodland.
so lots
Okay.
of that. Yeah. And then even further down the page, then you can keep going down. Oh yeah. And just to the left there, like in around where Prince of Wales is, and sort of all the way back and down until you get to
Oh
the
yeah.
bridge that goes to Richmond to the airport. So
Okay.
Vancouver's not a big place really to get from, the, let's say UBC, the tip where our university is. So that's University of British Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
all the way to the east side. Yeah, I mean, an hour without traffic, right? So
Okay.
not a huge
Yeah.
place. I mean, obviously with traffic, it changes everything, but I think we're
Right.
all aware of what that looks like. Yeah.
So
But yeah.
when people come in, what are some of the things that they might not be thinking of, or things that, if you're coming from another part of Canada
Yeah.
or even the United States, what are some things that you should be aware of if you're thinking about making a move?
Yeah, so a couple of different things there. I think people are always surprised at how green it really is. And I think that some people really want to be in nature because they understand that it's part of what we have here. But so they'll gravitate towards specific areas that they think are more nature or more picturesque, but the entirety of Vancouver is extraordinarily green. So you can live anywhere and literally be within a stone's throw of a park at the
I
very
love it.
least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and or maybe a 15-minute walk to a beach, or a place where you can be in nature. So I think sometimes people forget that, and so a lot of people want to be in a very specific area, but a lot of it is very similar.
Yeah. Would you say that Vancouver, I always say Boston is like a walking city. Like we walk everywhere.
Mhm.
And do you like, how is Vancouver in that sense? Obviously downtown, is probably very walkable, but like even when we come out a couple of towns, like so where I am, I'm in Medford, so I'm about 4 miles outside of like downtown Boston. But even within Medford, like people walk and we take public transportation, and we have a lot of one car families. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So obviously in the downtown core, we do get a lot of walking that happens. Lots of people ride bikes as well, or more popular now, or electric scooters. So
Yeah.
there's a little less effort involved. Very popular these days. And so in the sort of the most desirable areas, you'll find the best walkability. So just to the left of the screen, there's a little place there, right there, called Kitsilano, and that is the #1 neighborhood in Canada that gets searched. So, and it's because it's right on the beach. It's got great access to the university. So lots of young people live there. It's one of the most desirable areas in all of the Lower Mainland. So it gets the highest search traffic. And really it's one of the most desirable places to live. And that entire area is extraordinarily walkable. So you'll have everything from bars and restaurants to entertainment in a small place, but all low rise for the most part, maximum sort of 5-story buildings,
Hmm.
very community centric. So an interesting thing there. We've got half decent transit, I would say. I mean, it's not like going to London and taking the tube,
Right.
or anything like that.
Believe me,
But
Boston's not like that either. Our
right.
public transit systems can be challenged sometimes, but
Exactly.
yeah.
So, and for us, we've got the Sky Train, which runs both above ground. Well, it's mostly above ground, and then it does go underground as well. And it's fairly good. So we've got a line that runs from the airport all the way downtown, a couple loops out to the east side, and then out and further outside of Vancouver as well. We've got, if you're much, much further out coming in from, say, you can take the West Coast Express, sorry, but the bus system's fairly good as well. But for the most part, I mean, people like to ride their bikes until it becomes sort of this time of year.
Right.
And then we find that there's more people that do rely on their cars or on rideshare here.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just come back to Kitsilano area. If you were gonna maybe grab like a 2-bed, 2-bath unit, whether it's a condo or a townhome, What are we talking about for pricing over here as an example?
$850,000 is where we start. Yeah.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
would be, and those buildings are for the most part older, much
Yep.
older. So built in the 70s and the 80s. And then obviously if you want something newer, we're pushing, we're over $1,000 a square foot
Okay.
easily. Yeah, for a
So
lot of
that's
stuff.
very similar to our pricing in Cambridge, which is right by, Harvard and MIT, kind of,
Yeah,
if you were going to grab a unit near the universities, that's very similar pricing here. And certainly downtown Boston, from if you're in the heart of the walking areas, you're going to pay that all day long. Where
yeah.
I'm a little bit out further in the suburbs. So, I'd probably be considered like over here, a few miles out. I have a single family. We can range anywhere from 500,000 to 900,000, depending on how, fixed up it is, how much land you have, how many bedrooms and square feet. So sounds like our markets are probably pretty similar in pricing in that respect.
And just out of curiosity, so if you're, what's a regular basic lot size where you are?
So where I am, my lot is considered large and it's about 7,500 square feet.
Nice.
We have other lots in my town in particular that are under 4,000. But then certainly if you go further out into the suburbs, you're going to get your, kind of like half acre or 1 acre minimums. It's all very town specific.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think my yard's a little big, frankly. I don't like taking care of it. I wouldn't mind something a little smaller, but what's happening here is that builders are, they're tearing down old homes and they're building new ones, but they're really maximizing the lot. So you end up with this huge house and not a lot of green space left. And if I had a trade-off, I'd rather have a smaller home and a little bit of yard, but that's me.
Yeah. Yeah, and over here we're very green centric. So the building schemes and how much you can build, the floor space ratio is very restrictive here because
Interesting.
they want to obviously keep the green. There's trees here do not get torn down. If you've got a nice big tree on your property and you're putting another or you're subdividing or doing something like that, the trees are always going to be saved for the most part.
Good to know. Good to know.
So it's a little bit different that way in terms of what they will and will not sort of allow on a lot.
Yeah.
But all of our single family our single family lots the other year were designated as duplex available now. So they are zoned that way so that if you did want to build a duplex, you easily could.
Yeah. So the last question I wanted to just ask you is about, your industries and your jobs, because I think that certainly when folks are considering a move, even if we're working remotely, the possibility of having a job in the area that you're living is always there in the back of your mind. So talk to me a little bit about what type of jobs that are there in the industries.
Yeah, of course. So quite a few different varying things. The main one that we've had here for many years that my family all comes from is actually from mining. So we have a huge mining contingency here, and you'll find that there's a lot of geologists, a lot of engineers, a lot of those kinds of jobs, because we do have a lot of headquarters specifically in the downtown core for that. And it is a jumping point here to be able to get into other countries. So in terms of travel, it makes it fairly easy. Obviously, in British Columbia, we do have a fair amount of mining that goes on as well, and across Canada and over into Ontario, but a fairly large contingency here. Like I said, so my dad was a geologist and worked primarily in Mongolia and Peru. So they had, headquarters here for that. Other than that, Amazon, I feel like that's a big one
Right.
in a lot of places, and they're expanding. So taking up a fair chunk of space right now, and offering a lot of jobs, warehousing jobs, jobs in obviously in the tech sector as well for them. Tech is a pretty big one here right now. We have a lot of people still coming up from San Francisco because they can be working remotely, and San Fran has become a little bit expensive from what I understand.
Yeah, just a little bit,
but like woo, a little crazy. So there's that, and then I would say we have everyone's familiar with Lululemon. We've got Lulu here.
We all love it. Yes.
So a lot of fashion brands do our house here as well. And we have a fair amount of finance that goes on because we are like the gateway to Hong Kong, to China. And so we do have a lot of import business and that kind of thing that does happen here. And obviously with the port, a lot of supply chain goes, obviously comes
Yeah.
through the port, although things are a little hairy for, I feel like everybody
It's
right
everyone
now
right now. Yeah.
when it
But
comes
I
to
think,
that. Yeah.
that's amazing because that's such a gamut of, of first of all, like there's the mining, like we don't have any of that here. So I find that completely fascinating. But certainly, here in Greater Boston, we have tech, we have a lot of healthcare, we have universities, which certainly runs the scope of several industries,
Yeah.
depending on if you're teaching or administrative or whatever. So I think anybody relocating from Greater Boston would certainly find opportunity in Vancouver for sure.
Indeed. No,
Yeah.
and would be welcomed with open arms. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty fantastic. And like I said, when you can go skiing in the morning, water skiing in the afternoon, that's kind of like the perfect life.
It kind of is. Yeah. Well, Rhiannon, we're just about out of time, and I wanted to thank you so much for spending time with me today and chatting about Vancouver. And certainly, when we post, we'll post all your contact info. And if anybody who watches this is looking about to move to Vancouver or even just to visit, let me know. We'll hook you up. You get a private tour with Rhiannon,
Yeah.
and she'll show you all the sites.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
the
this
best
has been great.
restaurants and everything else, right? And
Can't
all the
wait.
all the little things that only locals know.
That's the best. That's the
Yeah.
best. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank
Have a
you. This is
wonderful
great.
day. And for everybody watching, until next time, I hope you love the way you live.